I dragged a dying man out of the Detroit River, and the first thing his wife did was slap me across the face. Not thank me, not hug me, not even ask if I was okay. Just a slap, and the words, "You disgusting street rat." If it were you, would you still have jumped into that water in the first place? My name is Maya, and this is the story of how a homeless black girl from under a bridge ended up saving a billionaire, exposing his company, clearing her mother's name, and starting something I never planned to start, but maybe was built for all along. I'm not here to give you a speech. I'm just going to tell you what happened. Exactly how it felt, because some of you are going to see yourselves in this, and some of you are going to realize you've been on the other side without even knowing it. It was one of those Detroit days where the cold doesn't just sit on your skin, it crawls inside your bones and locks the door behind it. The sky was this heavy, dirty gray, the kind that makes the whole city look tired. I was walking along the river with my beat-up backpack, one strap hanging by a thread shoe so worn that water came in, even when I was trying to stay on dry ground. That path by the river had kind of become my place, my fake living room, the one spot where the noise of the world faded just enough that I could hear myself think. The river doesn't judge you, it just moves. You know what I mean? I was minding my business thinking about how I was going to stretch $2 into dinner when I heard it, a sound that did not belong to the wind or the water. Help somebody. Help. People yell all kinds of things in this city. But there's a tone humans have when they suddenly feel death's hand brushing their shoulder, and once you've heard it, you never forget it. That was the tone. Raw panic, chest-deep fear. I froze for half a second, then ran. The riverbank there isn't pretty. It's muddy slick, patched with stubborn weeds and scattered trash. The kind of place where you have to watch every step. I almost went down on my face twice, but when I reached the edge and looked out at the water, my heart crashed against my ribs. There he was, a Mao in the middle of the churning river, expensive coat ballooning around him. Arms flailing, head going under and popping back up like a broken buoy. He wasn't swimming anymore. Not really just thrashing the way people do when instinct is doing all the thinking, because the brain is already half gone. No one else was around. No joggers, no dog walkers, no cops, squo one. Just him, the river, and me. I wish I could tell you I was brave without hesitation, that I just leaped like some movie hero. But that's not the truth. The truth is, for one ugly second, I thought this is not my problem. Nobody had ever jumped into anything for me. When I was hungry, people stared at their phones. When I was cold, they rolled windows up tighter. My life had taught me that if I was drowning, the world would just walk a little faster. Then his head went under and stayed there. Something inside me snapped like that rotten branch would later. I dropped my backpack and moved. The first step into the water was like stepping into a bucket of knives. It grabbed my ankles, my calves, all the warmth I had left in my body, and dragged it out. My jeans got heavy, immediately dragging at my legs, shoes filling with mud and rocks. The current hit me sideways so hard, I almost went down. I caught myself with a curse and kept going cold, searing up my thighs like a promise. "Hold on," I yelled, even though I couldn't see his face anymore. "Hold on. I'm coming." The river did not care. I stumbled forward until the ground dropped out from under me, and I had to swim every stroke a fight against the current and my own screaming muscles. Something sharp under the surface sliced across my thigh, right through my jeans, a hot, burning line in the middle of all that freezing. I gasped, almost sucked in water, but I grit my teeth and kept going, because by then it was simple. Either I got him, or later that night, I'd have to live with the memory of just watching him disappear. I went under, reached forward with both hands, grabbing at nothing. Slime, weeds, trash, until finally my fingers caught on fabric. A sleeve. I grabbed and pulled like my life depended on it, because honestly, it felt like it did. He came up heavy and dead weight head, lolling back lips, blue eyes rolled up. He looked like he was already gone. I hooked my arm under his chest and tried to kick back toward shore, but dragging him and fighting the current with a bleeding leg felt like trying to swim with concrete tied around my waist. Inch by inch, we made it. My lungs were screaming, my fingers numb, my vision starting to blur at the edges. But somehow the mud under my hands changed from slick riverbed to the rough, gritty bank. And then we were out. I collapsed beside him, shivering so hard, my teeth-clattered leg throbbing like something alive was buried in it. For a second, I just lay there gasping, wondering if either of us could move again. Then I turned to him. He wasn't breathing. His chest was still. His face slack. His lips this awful gray. I'd seen enough dead in this city to recognize the look. My stomach flipped. "No," I whispered, sliding closer. "No, no, no. You are not doing this to me after I just froze my butt off for you." I put my hands where I'd seen them in a video once, right in the center of his chest, and started pressing. The first push was awkward. Second one found more rhythm. I counted under my breath, tried to remember the beat. Compress. 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 Nothing. No movement. No breath. No cough. I tilted his head back, pinched his nose, took a deep breath full of river and fear, and breathed into his mouth. It tasted like cold metal, dirty water, and desperation. I almost gagged, but I did it again and again. "Breathe," I choked out between compressions. "Come on, man. Breathe, please." Then he jerked. His whole body spasmed under my hands. A violent shudder. Then he rolled to the side and coughed. Water exploded out of his mouth, splattering my jeans, the mud, everything. He sucked in a ragged breath like the air hurt. His fingers clawed at the ground, searching, grabbing. I sat back on my heels, my own chest heaving, my arms shaking so hard I could barely hold myself up. My leg was a burning blur. For a second, I thought I might throw up or pass out or both. That's when I heard the heels. Sharp, expensive heels pounding against dirt, like they were offended to be touching it. What the hell is going on here? I turned my head and saw her. Tall, thin, in a tailored coat that probably cost more than I'd seen in one place in my whole life. Pearl necklace bouncing with every step, hair perfectly done, even though she was half running down the embankment. Behind her on the road, above a silver SUV, stood with its door hanging open. She dropped to her knees beside the man, like gravity had pulled her straight there. "Tom." "Oh my God, Tom." Her voice cracked on his name, hands shaking as she cradled his wet head in her lap. So now I knew his name. He groaned a little, still dazed eyes half closed. Then her head snapped toward me, and I swear, I watched her face transform from fear to fury in less than 1 second. "What did you do to him?" she hissed. For a second, I thought I misheard. I saved him," I stammered, still shaking. He was drowning. I pulled him out. I did CPR. I saved him. She barked a harsh laugh ripping out of her. "Look at you. Look at your filthy hands. Your clothes. You really think I'm that stupid?" I tried to stand, but my leg buckled, and I stumbled back. Before I could catch myself, her hand came across my cheek with a crack that cut through the wind. "You little thief," she spat. "Did you push him in, try to rob him, you disgusting street rat? Let me ask you something, because I really want you to think about this. You risk your life for a stranger. You rip your leg open on a hidden branch. You breathe for him when he can't. And the first reaction you get is to be slapped and accused. Do you think that's fair?" Because in that moment, all I felt was the sting on my face, the ache in my leg, and the same old message the world had been giving me since I was a kid. People like you are always guilty first. I didn't. I cried. Voice shaking. I swear I saw him in the water. He was already drowning. What cut me off wasn't her voice. It was the universe. A sharp crack sounded above us like a gunshot, but wrong. Dry. Splintering. I looked up on instinct. A big dead branch, thick as my arm, was snapping off a tree right above the woman's head. She didn't notice. She was too busy glaring at me. "Look out! Look out!" I screamed. I didn't think. My body just moved. I launched myself forward and slammed into her, shoving her sideways with everything I had left. The branch came crashing down exactly where she'd just been standing, hitting the ground hard enough to send mud flying. She hit the ground with a curse, pearls tangling hair askew. I landed badly on my already torn leg. Pain shot up so fast my vision went white around the edges. I screamed, grabbed my thigh, as fresh blood soaked through my jeans, mixing with river water and mud. For a moment, everything went silent except for the ringing in my ears. The branch lay inches from her crossed ankles. She stared at it, chest rising and falling fast. Then looked at me. I was curled in the mud, clutching my leg. Panting face smeared with dirt and river and tears. Our eyes locked. I told you I managed through clenched teeth. I was trying to help. Something in her face flickered. Not apology, not yet. But the anger loosened just a little, like maybe the story in her head had just gotten inconvenient. Behind us, I heard the man groan. She saved me," he rasped. The woman turned back to him. "What?" He coughed again. Spat mud, then looked from her to me, his eyes more focused now. "She saved me," he said again louder. "She pulled me out. She did CPR. I'd be dead without her." And just like that, the truth was out in the open, lying there on the riverbank, with the three of us. And that broken branch. Sirens wailed in the distance. She eventually called an ambulance. Not for me. First. For him. But he kept glancing over at my leg, at the blood, at how I winced every time I tried to move, and something like guilt crept into his expression. By the time the paramedics got there, I was cold so deep it felt like my bones were buzzing. They wrapped me in foil blankets that crackled when I shifted, sliced my jeans to look at the wound, made that little medic noise. That means, yeah, this is bad, but fixable. One of them pressed around the edges of the gash, and I bit my lip until I tasted blood, to keep from yelling. "This one needs stitches," he said. "I'm fine," I muttered. Because that's what you say when you're used to your pain being an inconvenience for everyone else. "No." The man on the ground, Tom, said hoarsely. "She's not. You're taking her in. With me." His wife tensed. "Tom, you're soaked. You could be hypothermic. You should be the one. I'm not going anywhere without her," he said. And there was steel in his voice now. "She saved my life. Twice. She's going." That shut everybody up. They loaded us into the ambulance. His wife stayed behind with the SUV and her shock. Maybe her pride couldn't fit in the back with us. I don't know. Inside the ambulance, we were both wrapped in silver and shivering on opposite stretchers. The medic asked me for an emergency contact family guardians. I stared at him. "No," I said. "There's no one." He scribbled something down without pushing. Tom didn't let it go so easily. "No one?" he asked softly. "At all. Used to be my mom," I murmured, eyes on the ceiling. "She died when I was 9. I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Yeah," I answered. "Me too." The engine hummed, the siren sang. The lights outside painted the inside of the ambulance in red and white flashes. We rode like that for a while, both shaking, both too tired to pretend we were okay. "What were you even doing there?" he asked after a mid-voice raspy. "At the river, I mean." "I go there sometimes," I said. "It's quiet. Feels like it listens better than people do. He gave this tired half laugh. Funny, he said. That's why I went too. You came out there on purpose, I asked. He nodded against the stretcher. I needed to get away, he said. From noise, from pressure, from expectations. That doesn't sound like something rich people worry about. I snapped before I could stop myself. You'd be surprised, he replied. And there was something in his voice that made me wonder how many kinds of drowning there really are. I didn't think you were going to make it, I admitted, after a beat, my voice small in that metal box. He turned his head toward me, eyes tired but focused. You should have walked away, he said. No one would have blamed you. People walk away from me all the time, I answered. I guess I didn't want to be like them. That sentence just slipped out. But once it was in the air, it sat between us heavier than anything the river had thrown at me. They stitched my leg, cleaned the mud off me, tucked me into a hospital bed that felt too soft, too clean, too temporary. I lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the part where somebody came in and said, "Okay, that's enough time for you to go back to under the bridge now." Instead, the door opened, and he walked in. Dry clothes hair combed back of removed, moving slow, but steady. You okay? He asked, taking the chair beside my bed. I shrugged. I've had worse. He smiled faintly. My wife told me what happened with the branch, he said. She hit me. I said no sugarcoating. Thought I was hurting you. He sighed, ran a hand over his face. She panicked, he said. And then she judged. I'm not excusing it. She's not used to being wrong, especially about people who look like me and people who look like you. She's not the first person to look at me and jump to the worst conclusion, I said, turning my face away. She won't be the last. There was a long pause. Then he said something I did not understand at the time. Why are you still here? I asked finally. Most people would have said thank you. Maybe given me a 50 if they were feeling extra generous, and disappeared back to their real lives, because I'm tired of people who only show up when they want something from me, he said simply. You didn't. You didn't ask my name. You didn't check my pockets. You didn't even know who I was. You just jumped. I didn't know you were anybody, I muttered. Exactly, he said. Then he looked me straight in the eye and dropped the first bomb on my life. What would you say if I told you I don't want this to be the end of our story? He asked. I blinked. What do you mean? I said slowly. I mean, he said, choosing every word. I'm not going to let you limp back to some bridge and pretend this never happened. You saved my life. I'm not walking away from that. No one had ever said something like that to me. Not teachers, not social workers, not foster parents, not anyone. People left. That's what they did. No one's ever said that to me, I whispered. He smiled, kind of sad. Then I'll be the first, he said. By the way, before we go further, if you're still with me right now, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is right now, because I'm really curious how far this story travels and who's awake with me in this moment. And stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. He took me home, well, to his home. I was still thinking of it that way. In the car, wrapped in a borrowed coat, bandaged leg, stretched carefully along the seat, I watched Detroit pass by through clean windows for once. Neon signs, gray buildings, people lined up outside a soup kitchen I knew too well. I pressed my hand to the glass when we drove past it. I used to stand in that line, I said softly. For how long, he asked. A year. Maybe more, I said. Since they kicked me out of my last group home. I was 11. They said I fought too much. Did you, he asked. I thought about it. Once I said. A boy kept calling me Roach, said I smelled like the street. So I broke his nose. There was a beat of quiet. Then he said, Hood. I looked at him like he'd grown another head. You're not supposed to say that, I said. You're not supposed to be 11 and homeless either. He replied. You know that weird feeling when someone with power sees you and doesn't flinch, yeah? That. When we turned down his street and the gates opened, my brain unplugged. The house, mansion, whatever you want to call it, was made of brick and glass with windows that looked like entire walls. The lawn was a magazine cover. I'd never even been that close to a house like that, let alone walked inside. "It's just a house," he said when he saw my face. "No," I muttered as the car rolled up the circular drive. "It's a castle." Inside, the air was warm and smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. Not like bleach, not like sweat, not like sickness. Like somebody baked on purpose. Dark wood floors, tall ceilings, art on the walls that definitely didn't come from the discount bin. A woman in an apron, Loretta the housekeeper, appeared from somewhere, eyes widening when she saw me, but then she smiled so kindly it almost hurt. "Welcome home," Tom said quietly. I stopped dead. "Home," I repeated. I don't know if I can do this." "Maya," he said, stepping in front of me, not touching just there. "You saved my life, but more than that. You reminded me why it was worth saving. You don't have to prove anything here. You just have to let yourself breathe." "You're really not going to send me away?" I asked, voice shaking. "No," he said. "You're not invisible here." I wanted to believe him so badly it scared me. That first dinner was a war inside my own head. The table was long enough for a small army. I sat at one end because it felt safer to be far away, less in the way. He sat at the other, not out of formality, just because I'd already picked my spot. He let me have that. The food. I didn't even have words for it. Real baked chicken that wasn't dry roasted vegetables that still had color. Mashed potatoes that tasted like clouds. Warm rolls with butter that melted instead of tearing them apart. I ate slow horrific, like if I moved too fast it would vanish. "You don't have to finish it all," he said gently. "There's more where that came from." "It's just good," I said. "Tastes like Sundays." He tilted his head. "What do Sundays taste like?" he asked. "Warm," I said, and left it at that. After dinner, he showed me down a hallway lined with photos. One stopped me. A woman with kind eyes and a smile that reached all the way to her cheeks, hand resting on the shoulder of a laughing boy. "My wife Tom," said softly, "and our son Owen." I didn't ask what happened. I could hear the answer in his voice. He opened a door into a small, cozy room with bookshelves up to the ceiling. A fireplace, 2 big armchairs by a window, a knitted blanket over the arm of one chair, like it was waiting for someone to come back. "She called this her quiet corner," he said. "If the world was too loud, this is where she'd go." "Do you read?" asked me after a moment. "Used to," I said. "Before things got loud for me, too." He pulled out a thin book. The cover, a simple drawing of a boy and a tree. The giving tree. I breathed. "My mom read this to me once." "Want to read it again?" he asked. I sat down and opened it. My voice came out small at first, but as the words filled the space, it steadied. He listened like every sentence mattered. Somewhere near the end, my throat closed up and my eyes blurred, and when I finished, I just stared out the window. "Do you think trees ever get tired of giving?" I asked quietly. He thought about it. "I think they do," he said. "But I also think sometimes they just need someone to sit in their shade for a while." I didn't plan to fall asleep in that chair under that knitted blanket, but I did. And for the first time in forever, I slept through a storm. When I woke in the morning, rain streaked the windows. Leaves stuck to the glass. My leg still hurt, but the beating throb had dulled. The house was so quiet, I could hear the drip of water from the roof outside. Tom was in the other chair, a folded newspaper in his hand. He looked up when I stirred. "You slept through a storm," he said with a tired smile. "That's usually a good sign." "I didn't even hear it," I said, sitting up slowly. "That's how you know your body finally felt safe enough to rest," he replied. I pulled the blanket tighter around me for a second, then let it drop. "You don't look like someone who needs saving," I said. He stared at the window for a moment. I've heard that before, he said. But that day by the river, I did. We went back and forth like that, talking around things we weren't ready to name yet. His grief, anger, his loneliness, and fear. Then finally, I asked the question that had been chewing at me. Who are you? Really, I said. Because we both know regular folks don't live in houses like this. He pressed his lips together, thinking, does it matter? He asked. Yes, I said. Not because I care about the fancy, but because everyone else will, and I don't like being the only one in the dark. He looked at me, weighed something inside himself, then nodded. My name is Thomas Ward, he said. I started a tech company in the late 90s, sold it, then started another one. Ward Tech. I blinked. Ward Tech. The name printed on phones in pawn shops, tablets behind glass at stores I'd never dare walk into. Ads flashing from bus stops I couldn't afford to ride. So you're like, rich, I said. He snorted softly. Yeah, he said. I suppose so. And you were alone by the river, dressed like, I don't know, some guy who works at the auto shop, I said. Because that day he said I didn't want to be Thomas Ward. I just wanted to be Tom. A man who could sit by the water and not be needed for a minute. And you got me instead. I said, I got you instead. He echoed. Sorry to disappoint, I muttered. You didn't, he said. And the way he said it made my chest ache. Not even close. That was twist number 1. The man I dragged out of the river was a billionaire who didn't know how to keep his own head above water emotionally. Twist number 2 came later, and it cut a lot deeper. A few nights after that, after hot chocolates, after learning he had a son named Owen, who died in a car accident, after seeing the cracks between him and his wife up close, he came into the kitchen while I was trying to flip pancakes without burning them. There's something I need to talk to you about, he said. Is this where you tell me you secretly have 3 more mansions, and you're trying to figure out which one to drop me at? I joked. He didn't smile. It's about your mom, he said. The spatula froze in my hand. What about her? I asked. Her name sounded familiar, he said. Sitting down at the island. It bothered me for days, so I went digging the way I used to when I still ran things. I checked old employee records from one of Ward Tech's subsidiaries. My stomach dropped. What are you saying? I whispered. I'm saying, he replied carefully, that your mother, Camille Brooks, worked for us. She was a systems analyst on a project with the Juvenile Justice Department. The kitchen felt suddenly too bright, too sharp. No, I said. Automatically. She worked for the state. At least that's what she told me. Something with youth centers and computers and through us, he said. Through our contract. She was on a team working on biometric check-in systems for kids on probation. Kids in detention, that kind of thing. I gripped the counter, and 3 years ago he continued. She filed an internal complaint. A serious one. She said the system was logging kids as breaking curfew when they weren't. That meant automatic penalties, solitary lockdowns, violation marks. She said it was wrong, dangerous, that it would ruin lives. I saw it then. The late nights her hunched over her laptop. The whispered phone calls I wasn't allowed to listen to, the stack of printed papers on the kitchen table. The way she'd stare at them like they were a bomb, and she was trying to figure out how to disarm it. What happened? I asked, voice thin. Officially, he said. Nothing. Her complaint never made it to full review. On paper, it looks like she broke protocol, tried to go around the process, became a problem. That's what they called her at the end. I said more to myself than to him. A problem. He slid a folder across the counter. Unofficially, he said it looks like someone blocked it, buried it. And then she was fired. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the counter to stay upright. She thought no one believed her, I whispered. She thought she failed. I thought she gave up. I was so angry at her for leaving me with nothing. And it was them. He reached into the folder, and pulled out a stack of printed emails while she screenshots. She didn't give up, he said. She sent a backup of everything to a personal cloud. That's what I'm holding. She was right, Maya. She was right about all of it. That was the twist. The man whose life I saved was tied directly to the people who had helped destroy my mother's. If it were you, and you found that out, what would you have done? Would you have walked out of that house and never looked back? Told him to keep his mansion and his guilt and his apologies? Or would you have stayed and helped him tear the rot out from the inside? I stayed. He told me he wanted me at the next board gathering, not as a pity guest, but as a witness. Ward Tech headquarters was another universe. Marble floors, glass everywhere. Security guards who looked like they'd been carved from stone people in expensive suits, carrying devices with my mom's old company logo on them. As we walked through the lobby, I could feel eyes on us. Whispers starting as soon as we passed. Is that Tom Ward? Who's the girl? She's not dressed like them. Tom put a gentle hand at the center of my back, not pushing, just guiding. You okay? He asked quietly. Do I look okay? I said without looking at him. You look strong, he said. The elevator to the top floor was chrome and mirrors. I saw us standing there together, him in his quiet, rich clothes, me in Loretta's carefully chosen outfit. Cheap shoes that still somehow looked out of place on that glossy floor. A silver book charm on a chain around my neck that had belonged to my mother. On the 39th floor, the doors opened into a boardroom that screamed money and power. Glass walls, a massive table city sprawled out beneath us like something to be owned. At one end sat his wife, Cynthia, in a sharp suit, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. Around the table were other board members, all different faces. Same kind of gaze. Tom, she said crisply. You're late. I brought someone, he replied. This is Maya Brooks, daughter of Camille Brooks. There it was again, that name dropping into the air like a stone into dark water. A man in a gray suit, cufflinks that probably cost more than my whole childhood shifted in his chair. James Whitmore. I didn't know his name yet, but I saw something flicker across his face when he heard my mom's. Ah, he said with a polished smile. Yes, I remember that situation. Unfortunate. Her complaint never reached proper channels. She violated protocol, tried to leak data. We had no choice. No choice, I repeated softly. That's what you tell yourself. Everyone turned to look at me. I hadn't raised my voice, but the words cut through the room anyway. She reported faulty data, Tom said, sliding a folder onto the table. Biometric systems logging kids incorrectly, putting them in solitary for things they didn't do. She attached logs, emails, video, everything. We found her backup. It's all here. James didn't touch the folder. That data is outdated, he said. That system was decommissioned. After kids suffered, I said, standing up slowly. After my mother lost her job. After she got sick. After she died, thinking no one believed her. Miss Brooks, Cynthia said, voice tight, this is a private internal matter. You may not fully understand. No. I cut in, looking straight at her. I understand it better than anybody in this room, because I watched it kill her little by little while you were all cashing checks. James stood up too, towering, trying to pull the dad voice on me. Young lady, you are emotional and misinformed. There are complexities you do not grasp, and frankly, this is not the arena for. Don't call me young lady, I said, every word sharp. Don't talk down to me like I'm some kid knocking on the wrong door. I know exactly what you did. You buried her complaint so your stock price wouldn't dip. You called her a disruption. You let kids sit in cells alone for hours because your precious tech said they were somewhere they weren't. His jaw clenched. You think anyone's going to listen to a girl from under a bridge? He said, losing some of the polish now. You have no idea what game you're stepping into. I held up my phone. You're the one who doesn't understand, I said. Because we're not playing the old game. This is recording. And if you're so confident you did nothing wrong, you shouldn't mind answering some questions on the record, right? You can't do that here, he snapped. Yes, Tom said, standing beside me now. We can. And we are. James looked around for support and found nothing. The others stared at their hands, their tablets, their expensive pens. No one wanted to sync with him. Tom, if you leak this, you'll hurt more than me, he said desperately. Shareholders, partners, the entire structure will. Good, I said. Maybe next time they'll think twice before they build something on the backs of kids who can't fight back. James took a step toward me, something mean in his eyes. You think you're going to win here? He hissed. You're nothing. You're a girl from nowhere with a sad story and a billionaire pity friend. She's not from nowhere, Tom said quietly. She's from Camille. Silence. I moved to terminate James Whitmore from the board, Tom said. Effective immediately. Hands went up, one by one until it was clearly a majority. James's face went slack. He grabbed his folder, his fancy pen, whatever scraps of dignity he had left, and walked out without another word. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like air finally reaching the bottom of my lungs. That night back in Tom's study, surrounded by printouts of my mother's emails, time-stamped logs of kids being flagged as truant when they were already in their rooms. Internal memos with watered-down phrases like optics and risk management. I asked him the hardest question. What happens now, I said. He leaned back in his chair, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. Now we go public, he said. The DOJ, the press, the whole ugly truth. We fix what we can force, what we can't fix ourselves, and hope it's not too late for some of those kids. And Cynthia, I asked. He gave a small, sad laugh. She's scared, he said. Scared of losing control, scared of losing me, scared of losing status. Fear makes people cruel. She stood by while they broke my mother, I said. She doesn't get my sympathy yet. He nodded, not arguing. He opened a drawer and took out a small velvet box. I found this in an evidence bag from your mom's old desk, he said, sliding it across the table. I think it was for you. Inside was a simple silver necklace, a tiny open book on a chain. My throat closed up instantly. She never got to give it to me, I said, hands shaking as I fastened it around my neck. She is now, he said. Then he handed me a sheet of paper. I think you should say what you wish you could have told her, he said. Write it down. Even if she can't read it, you need to hear yourself say it. At the top, I wrote, Dear Mama, and everything I had been too angry, too hurt, too lost to say, poured out. I told her she'd been right, that they'd finally listened, that the man whose company helped crush her had stood beside me in a boardroom, while I said her name loud enough that no one could look away, that I was scared and tired and furious, but I wasn't alone. Later, he gave me something else scanned from her cloud folder, dated 2 days before she died. A note addressed to me. Maya, it said in her crooked handwriting. If anything happens to me, keep your head high. The world is full of liars, but it's also full of fighters. You're one of them. Don't forget your name. Love, Mama. I held that piece of paper to my chest and finally cried the way I should have the day she died. From there, it stopped being just about clearing her name and started being about what to do with that truth. We filed everything with the DOJ. They opened a formal investigation. The juvenile system started dismantling the broken tech. Ward Tech announced changes, publicly acknowledged past failures, all those phrases corporations use when they're caught. But this time, there was substance behind it. There had to be. Too many eyes were watching. One afternoon, I got an email from the Department of Justice in the little attic office Tom let me turn into Camille's Voice headquarters. Yeah, that's what I called it, Camille's Voice. A program to teach girls like me how to understand systems, how to advocate, how to not get crushed quietly. They were officially acknowledging my mother's whistleblower complaint as valid and substantiated, clearing her of all wrongdoing, publicly recognizing her contribution. They were creating a new honor, the Citizens for Justice Award, and giving it to her posthumously, the first of its kind. I leaned back in that old creaky chair, stared at the ceiling, and laughed through tears. My mom, the problem employee, the disruption, was being honored by the same kind of institutions that had tried to ignore her. We had a small ceremony at a park near the neighborhood where we used to live. No red carpet, no huge sponsors, just a bronze plaque under a red oak tree that read, "In memory of Camille Brooks, mother advocate, truth teller. She saw injustice. She spoke anyway." I laid a white lily at the base and said quietly, "I used to think a monument had to be marble, but this feels better. It's closer to the dirt you fought for." A little girl came up to me afterward, maybe 11 or 12, holding a beat-up notebook. "Miss Brooks," she asked shyly, "I saw your story online, and I've been writing something about a girl who exposes a principal who's been changing grades for money. How do you know when the truth matters more than what people think of you?" I knelt so we were eye level. "You know when it keeps you up at night," I said. "When staying quiet feels heavier than speaking." "Can you sign this?" she asked, holding out the notebook. I wrote, "Keep writing the truth. You already have the voice," and handed it back. A few weeks later, I stood backstage at the Detroit Justice and Reform Conference. In a navy blazer Loretta had pressed with extra love black slacks, my mom's little silver book charm catching the light. They introduced me as the founder of Camille's Voice, the girl who had helped bring down a corrupt system, the daughter of a whistleblower finally recognized. I stepped up to the mic, looked out over lawyers, activists, students, journalists, even a few of the Ward Tech board members who had watched me in that glass room, and I told them what I've basically told you now. Not as a lecture, not as a victim story, but as a lived mess of pain and courage and unfairness and unexpected solidarity. I told them my mom wasn't perfect, but she was right. I told them that silence is the best friend injustice ever had. I told them that kids in foster care and juvenile halls need more than sympathy. They need tools. I told them about that riverbank, about that slap, about that branch, about the way a homeless girl and a broken billionaire pulled each other out of different kinds of water. And toward the end, I said this: to every person who has ever told the truth and been called trouble, crazy, dramatic, angry, ungrateful, I want you to know you are not the problem. You are the alarm. And to the people who kept us quiet, I want you to hear me clearly. We're done whispering. People stood up. Some cried, some clapped, some just stared, like they'd been hit by something they didn't see coming. When I walked off stage, Tom was waiting in the wings. Older, more tired, but lighter somehow. "You didn't just talk," he said. "You made the walls listen." "Good," I said. They were too quiet for too long. So here we are, you and me, sitting together in this little corner of the internet, while I tell you about a river, a man, a slap, a company, a mother, and a voice that refused to stay buried. Let me leave you with this, and I really want you to answer in the comments because I don't have all the answers, and I'm not pretending to. Do you think what happened to my mom counts as justice, now that they gave her an award and fixed some policies years too late? Is it enough to apologize after someone's gone, after the damage is done, after a whole life has been bent around a lie? Would you forgive a system that only listens when it's forced to? And if you've ever been in a position like mine or hers, shouted into a void, told you were exaggerating, punished for telling the truth, I want to hear your story. Really. Tell me in the comments what you went through, what you did, whether you would do it again. Or if you're realizing you might have been on the other side, quick to judge someone who looks like me, or quick to trust a system because it worked for you. Talk about that too. Because Camille's Voice isn't just a program or a plaque under a tree. It's every time someone like you decides they're done whispering about what's wrong and starts saying it out loud, where it can't be ignored. If you watched all the way to the end, thank you. Hit like. So this story gets pushed to someone who needs to hear that they're not crazy and they're not alone. Subscribe if you want more real, messy, uncomfortable, hopeful stories like this. And tell me where you're watching from, what time it is, and what part of this story hit you the hardest. We pulled one man out of a river that day, but the truth is, there are a lot of people drowning in silence right now. Maybe your comment, your share your own story, is the hand that reaches in and pulls someone else up. I'm Maya. I didn't choose this fight, but I'm in it now, and together we're done whispering.